he misbehaves, he has no right whatsoever vis-a-vis the entrepreneur because he has signed already before he starts the job. There's something called, I don't know, form number 6, which the worker signs before he starts the job. So it has nothing to do with the capacity to fire workers. But anyway, the second point I'm making is that what sounds economically rational is not really rational unless it is socially and politically rational. And I think this is, very important, and it should be taken into consideration when we try to suggest something to government. And I don't like to monopolize the discussion, but I think this is very important in order to have, a better picture of what is rational policy. Mrs. Sabir Rashdan would like to make an intervention.
Sabir Rashdan, UN Esquire consultant. Thank you for presentation, but I see here that we are looking for reform or solution. That's my first question. Are we looking here for a solution or a reform? Because Egypt already underwent a transition before, economic reform before, but it didn't work out. And I see also a lot of blame about politicians, okay? So I worked in the government before. Just what they care about is what the indicators. So according to the first slide, yes, economic growth was very good. Poverty reduction, inequality. So if I went now to the minister, what he thinking of? Economic growth, equality, poverty reduction, and this went well in Egypt. So it wasn't just the poor. The masses who did Tahrir Square, they were not the poor people. They were the middle class. And that's my next question. I think in last May, World Bank's the report by Francesco Ferreira, Nancy Bersal, and Nora, the work about Latin America. In the first page, they said they are very lucky that the 15 countries went out of the poor, and they became now a lower middle class. Last month, we saw protesters in Brazil. So now, indicators again are very good, quite fantastic economy. But at real life, no. The protester means more aspiration for the people. And that's what happened in Egypt. Egypt is not that bad. It's not like India. India much worse. Like Amartya Sen said in his last book last month, it's uncertain for victory. Yes, we have 7.2, but at social indicators, damage infrastructure, social and health, third of the infant of the death was from India. So this is what I like to ask. What we are searching for? Another reform? Another economic reform? Another indicators? It's okay. According to the UNDP, World Development Program, enrollment, health, GDP per capita, it all went well. And even after Morsi. Now, the indicators are taking upward. In Egypt, and I say that we cannot comparison here between India and Brazil and the rest of Africa, because it's another perception. It's a perception of people about inequality, about who are the poor. Maybe cash transfer is a very good issue here, but you cannot apply in Egypt. How could you apply cash transfer to the poor when you don't know who are the poor? When you put money in the bank, to where? So, are we searching for a solution or another reform? And what the features of the next reform according to two transitions, one economic and the second, somehow it's political transition. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think the last intervention would be Dr. Mohamed Kawi, who has been working with the UNDP, who wrote a lot on governance in the MENA region, and who is directing the Ford Foundation office in Cairo. And I think people in this room will not allow you to get out before you say something specific about the state of the economy in the countries of the Arab privileges. I know that you made some remarks, but we would like to have a sort of global statement on this. So first, Dr. Mohamed Kawi.
Thank you, Dr. Mustafa, for putting me on the spot. Thanks for your presentation. Very nice and very captivating. most of the comments I heard in response to your presentation so far have revolved around your economic propositions related to deregulation or related to dealing with the subsidies and cash transfers. I think your presentation had another message in it that I'd like to open some discussion on, and that's the governance message, which is quite unusual for a World Banker to focus on. To focus on the state capture, to focus on bad governance, to focus on the political economy of underdevelopment. So I congratulate you for taking on these subjects. The only response I heard you say at the end of your presentation to deal with this complex of issues related to bad governance and state capture was bringing the information down to the poor, empowering the poor with information. But then you sort of put a big question mark on your own recommendation by saying, but the poor don't have time to do anything with this information because they're too busy earning an income. And now for me, I think this is typical of the institution, which is a great institution, which is the World Bank, of flirting with the solution, but really not taking it all the way through to its full fruition. And here I will start by asking you to dwell a little bit, reflect a little bit on two of the tools that the World Bank has put out to the world lately to deal with state capture. Tool number one was the governance indicators of the World Bank. What has the bank done with its great set of governance indicators in order to either embarrass bad governors or bring them to the table to bear responsibility for bad governance? And the second tool that the World Bank put out, great tool I have to admit, is the whole gamut of social accountability tools. At a time when most of bank investments in the global south still consider accountability fiduciary accountability, making sure you follow the flow of money to make sure it is spent well, mostly not by giving people the power of social accountability as part and parcel of the projects of the bank. Although the tools of social accountability have been put out by the bank, as well as regional networks on social accountability. I am provoking you, but in fact what I'm trying to seek from you are just reflections on those two major tools that the bank pioneered to deal with bad governance, which is the second message of your presentation.
Thank you very much. The floor is yours now.
Yeah. There's quite a few issues. Let me start with what Abir was asking. Are we searching for reforms or something else? Clearly, it's not that we're searching for reforms. What I showed was that these reforms are going to be critical in improving the lives of the poor. But I'm searching for what I call the title of my presentation. I want to disrupt this low-level equilibrium. I think Egypt is still stuck in a low-level equilibrium. And we need to find ways of disrupting it. And the equilibrium was a specific one. It's not politics. But it is a low-level political equilibrium in the sense that there are politically powerful forces that are still able to resist downward bottom-up accountability. And I urge you to keep that in mind. So, and these are the same politically powerful forces that will resist reform of subsidies, or resist the cash transfers, for that matter. Or even this universal ID, what do they call it? Universal data, yeah, the universal identification database, you know, that, yes, you need that, but remember that when you, if you do succeed in getting a universal database, all sorts of ghost workers and, what is it called, the twins, the false twins will show up, and those people know it. And some of them are able to say, oh, well, this is going to take another 5 years because we have to stop it. So just be aware of that. And that's why I was deliberately provocative on the side of trying to propose policies that would make this resistance transparent. Now, one footnote on Mustafa's comment. You know, I was not talking about a bigger budget allocation or a smaller budget allocation. I'm saying take the existing budget allocation. And remember that existing budget allocation pays for the schools. Right now, that's what it's doing. And I want to flip it around and say, I give that allocation to the children as vouchers, and the school gets paid only if the child goes to that school. So you could think of an equilibrium where, as I was explaining in Bangladesh, where the school, the same amount of money, in fact now they're actually spending even less because it's so much more efficient, is transferred, and the quality of the service is improved. Right? Just think about the amount of money you're wasting by absentee teaching. Well, if the school gets paid, depending on whether the teacher, only the teacher's there, because the kid is not going to go to that school if the teacher's absent, suddenly you actually spend less money, not more. So there are ways of tackling that. But the question of asking me to reflect a bit. First of all, let me just say, this is not new for the World Bank. I don't know where you got the perception that the World Bank doesn't deal with governance or political economy. We've been doing it for 10, 15 years. And, you know, let me be very precise. The only thing that the World Bank is not supposed to do is interfere in the politics of our member countries. There's nothing wrong in us making statements about the fact that the politics in our member countries is affecting the development outcomes we're seeking. Indeed, it would be irresponsible if we didn't do that. And you know, we've just, in 2004, the WDR, we did a whole section on the politics of service delivery. And that has actually generated a whole lot of work, as Edward was referring to earlier. Edward's, your title is governance in, what is your title? Governance and public sector specialist or something like that? Yeah, we got one sitting right here in Cairo. So don't worry about that. There's absolutely no taboos. Now but I do want to make a side comment there. I actually think it's more useful to approach governance through the things that matter to poor people, like education and health, rather than just saying, you know, you guys are all corrupt, just fix it. So but that's purely instrumental. They are corrupt, but I find it doesn't help to go around telling them, you know, bad boys, you know, you should clean up your act. I said, you want to get education to poor people, let's get the teachers to show up. But it is governance, there's no question about it. And you asked about the world governance indicators are doing their thing. They are actually embarrassing governments. What I would say is that we have now introduced a whole set of new tools like that, very much like it, that embarrass governments even more. The doing business indicators are performing the same function. We have, I started something in Africa that we're now spreading called service delivery indicators. We actually estimate that picture I showed you of Senegal is an example of that service delivery indicators, where we collect that now across the globe. And that again, it's actually very interesting. I mean, some governments are shocked. In Tanzania, I think I have the Senegal there. But in Tanzania, you know, Tanzania is a sort of paragon of socialist government, and they think that they're doing very well, and they show the prime minister had a fit and called the education minister in and said, you got to fix this. We can't tolerate that. So there's quite a lot on that. And the social accountability tools, well, these are the social accountability tools that we are, and there is quite a lot of take-up. I'm impressed at how much there is going on there. Indeed, we've now got a fund that we can finance civil society directly. Before, our money could only go to governments. But we have now, it's called the Global Partnership for Social Accountability, GPSA, which can finance civil society as long as they're doing something on social accountability. So that movement is growing. I would like to see more of it in Egypt. And I would like, and more than, I mean, there's a lot in Egypt, don't get me wrong, and some of the people who are doing it are here. But I'd like to see more of it in a greater consciousness of it in government. I'll tell you what I'm really concerned about here, and this has come up in other countries as well, which is there comes a point where the social accountability folks are doing such a good job that the government thinks it should just take its hands off. Yet it's the government's responsibility. They're doing a good job only because the government is doing such a bad job that they're supplementing it. We had these women yesterday who run schools for a 2-hour school after the school day. The children go to school, but since they don't learn anything, they're running a separate school for 2 hours after school. Now that's not a sustainable solution. And at some point, the government has to get its act together to say, no, we're going to use these people to keep the kids during school if they can. Okay, finally on Arab economies, quick 2 minutes on that. I'm still trying to get my mind around MENA countries, and every time I think I figured it out, something happens and it changes. So it's a bit of a moving target. But let me give you my characterization at the moment, which is, as I was saying here, before the Arab Spring, there were a huge number of distortions that were not in the direction of the poor. They were not helping the poor. They were actually working against them. Then came the Arab Spring, and some of it had to do with the fact that people resented these policies, but some of it had to do with other things. And then came the turmoil after the Arab Spring. And what has happened with the turmoil after the Arab Spring is that the macroeconomic situation in almost all of our countries, which was quite stable, has gotten worse, significantly worse. So you've got a fiscal deficit of 14% of GDP here, 10% in Tunisia, and so on. So you've got and these microeconomic or structural distortions haven't gone away. In fact, some cases they've gotten worse. So you've got these 2 layers. You've got the macro instability and the microeconomic distortion still there. Not to mention lots of uncertainty on the political front. Who's in charge? And this is a very serious situation. Because what I'm worried is that the macro situation is such that we have very little room to maneuver. If there's another shock, an oil shock or something, the Egyptian macro situation could get go seriously wrong. And at the same time, we have to be working on that structural side in order to shore up the situation. So I'm worried, and not just here. I mean, all of my countries. It's a grim situation. We're in for some hard times, but we can't lose sight of the mandate that the people sent us here for, which was to make government accountable to its people.
This has been great presentation, great discussion. We thank very much Shanta for this presentation. We thank you also for your questions. And I think we going with this series of World Bank lectures, but we go back also to our interest in what is happening in the country. So the next meeting of Partners Forum is on the constitutional amendments, and we shall inform you of the date and of the speakers. So thank you very much, and you are most welcome to continue the conversation with Professor Shanta over a cup of tea. Thank you.